Good afternoon. Hello and welcome to MAP Real Talk Show. Today is not like any other day. Today is a special day. Today we're going to discuss the very important issue that many of us don't understand, and especially on social network when people decide to come up with different things. But first, I'd like to introduce you to my honorable guest, my friend now, I hope we will be, and his name is Kirk Nurmi. Mr. Nurmi, welcome to the show.
George, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
We are very honored. You notice I'm getting speechless to talk to you, sir. We're very honored to have you on board again officially. And I said it to you 3 times, and I'll say it one more time. We're really honored. Because guys like you that keeps the law and constitutional and uphold, and they go into the lion's den in the fire, and that I need to recognize. But before we get into the details, sure. I want to introduce you to my co-hosts.
All right.
First on your left, you see Cindy Head. Come on, Cindy. Say hello.
Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
Good.
And of course, on her left is Mr. Ken Ron.
Pleasure.
Hi.
Nice to
Is
meet you.
our co-host.
All right.
Should we call him senior?
No. Well, he.
It's
She
your
always
fault.
ties that to age.
Right.
We'll come up with another name.
Okay, chronologically, he
Yes.
is senior to me, but that's okay.
Well, because you objected it the last time.
Well, yeah. Well,
So,
you
Mr.
know.
Kirk, just to let you know, like everybody here already was so excited to have you on our show, our humble show. And I am in particular, I don't know where to begin because there's so much been covered. And as I read and I knew through my life, through experiencing you through TV and watching everything unfold, of course I follow news, media, and as well as films. During that period, I will hear bits and pieces. You know, I didn't hear the whole thing like 100%. But then now that I went deep for the past 5 days, I need to get paid for this because it was heavy homework. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
I really don't know. There is so much I could cover you with 100 hours
Yeah.
on this thing. And literally, folks, this is why today there's no got you moment. Today, we're going to talk. They call him an infamous, but I call him famous. For me, as a person, not because of just the show that the job that he did, but at the end of the day, it's what he had done for the past, and the sacrifice. Is it 5.5 years you said? Or I thought it was 7.
5.5 years with her.
The sacrifice that he did, as a now, I got to introduce you to you again as a defense lawyer. Former now.
I bear that with a badge of honor,
Okay,
George.
former, but at that time, I followed it by saying at that time.
All right.
At that time,
Bittersweet.
okay, you were hired by the public defenders, by the state, by the people. Then the prosecutor was hired by the same, different, of course, branch, but in the same thing, representing this. It's no big money for you. It's not like he made billions of dollars. This is the job that he was required by our constitutional to protect the citizens. So when you sit and you start typing someone that's presenting the law and order that keeps us safe, like today to have our show in peace, this is the guys that we have to say thank you for their service. Because they go in the lion's den, I said it twice, and what everybody knows what that means. It's like uncharted water. You don't know what's going to happen. You're going to get scratched. You're going to get eaten up. Why we have to write those things? The reason why, because nobody explains it. Here I am today with our show. We're going to take you on another trip. The different side of the story. The story of a human being. A family man. Wife. Kids. The whole 9 yards. Calm. Having his life like every day. Went to law school. Nobody goes to law school under vigorous studies just to be a nasty guy or misbehave or be a criminal. No. People that go to law schools, medical school, there's a reason why it's 7, 10, 8, 10 years. Because it takes dedication, time consuming, and focus. With that said, today I talk too much, but in the next hour is going to be him. Because I'm not going to ask him too many questions. The question is going to rely on your thoughts to give you that positive energy, ladies and gentlemen, from him to you, from me to you, with all due respect. Again, I'm back to reality a little bit because I'm going into the education. There's so much to cover. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Is there something you could tell us before the storm? The calmness. You graduated law school, you with your wife and kids, and now you get the call.
Well,
where did the whole thing start?
Let me back up a little bit.
Yes.
I went to law school. I began law school in 1997. I went to
Right.
the University of Wyoming.
Wyoming.
My wife and I moved to Laramie, and I went there with the idea that I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney because the rights you just talked about,
Right.
the First Amendment,
First Amendment,
that allows you to do what
Sixth
you
Amendment,
do,
yeah.
as well as the Fourth Amendment that stops police from knocking on your door, right to fair trial. All those things always meant a lot to me. So I went to law school with the idea that I was going to become a criminal defense attorney.
Right.
After my first 2 years, I was allowed to practice in Wyoming. I became the appellate director of a defender aid clinic, meaning we argued appellate rights for convicted inmates in Wyoming. And I got to argue in front of the Wyoming Supreme Court twice.
Right.
Not mock competition, but real deal, right? And because and I was happy to do so because those rights always meant a lot to me. And then when I graduated in 2000, a friend of mine had ties here and set up an interview with the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office, which was a natural step for me because I wanted to do criminal defense work, and that's where a lot of people start.
You want to do your passion.
To cut their teeth. And I always believed, in addition to those rights, is that it shouldn't be just based on your income.
Right.
Like, you should be able to get good, diligent, vigorous representation without having to pay for it. So that's one of the things I tried to do.
But that's what I want to explain
with
to
my
our
legal
audience. This is
education.
very important, vital point you just brought up. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and so over the years, that's what I did in the courtroom, and a lot of people think, oh, how can you defend the guilty? And you get that as cocktail parties, right? As I moved here, I became a member of the bar. I started meeting more people. How can you defend those people?
It's a right, though.
But it's really not about the people. It's about the rights. And one thing that criminal defense attorneys will say, it's about the client, or it's about the Constitution. Not the client, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you go in and you defend those rights. You're not defending their conduct. You're not defending anything they did or said. You are defending their rights.
Right.
And I did that with the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office for, over 10 years.
Whoa, that's a long tenure.
Yeah, and in 2010, I was a member of the Capital Defense Unit. So if you remember, those people who have been around Maricopa County for a while. Andrew Thomas was the county attorney.
Yes.
And he believed in the death penalty very vociferously, right?
Yeah.
And so he was charging a lot of cases. And after about 7 or 8 years in my career, I was kind of getting burned out on all the cases, the high caseload, everything else. Yeah. So I was offered the chance to move to the capital unit, the death penalty unit, which is the ultimate defense of rights, because we're talking about the power of our government to unnaturally terminate someone's life early, right? So I moved to that unit in about 2008, 2009, and I tried 2 death penalty cases before I became infamous, as we talked about. And it was, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there are people who've been in that unit for dozens of years that had not even gone to trial, right? And so I tried 2 of those death penalty cases, and we always had 2 or 3 on our caseload, and after I finished one, that's when my supervisor walked down the hallway and handed me a file, an empty file, because it was getting transferred and there was all kinds of stuff. But that file had Jody Arias' name on it. And that was August of 2009.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's when the whole thing started with you.
Yeah, on one level, yeah.
Did you imagine that's the route or the road you would take in the path when you got handed that file? Did you understand?
No, because in 2009, a lot of people, well, you don't have any input in it because you're assigned a case, right? And there's no good cases in the capital unit because it's always a first-degree murder charge. And more often than not, if they're charging the death penalty, guilt is pretty much a foregone conclusion.
Right.
It's about saving someone's life.
So what was all this chaos if everybody knows she's going to be sentenced to life or capital punishment? But what was all the mayhem that's happening around that case during that period when you first took office?
Well, when I first took over, we've got to step back in time because people have a hard time conceptualizing it. In 2009, she wasn't the notorious, infamous figure that she was, right? It was just, the thing that stood out to me when I had the case, it was a female. It's very rare that you see a female facing execution, right? It's overwhelmingly male, and they have typically have a long and colorful criminal history.
Right, but she did it, right?
But she didn't. And what had taken place in terms of media back then, because this was a year later. She had prior counsel, got transferred to me a year later. In 2008, after her arrest, she had done some interviews with, I believe it was CBS 48 Hours.
Right.
And then she did one before she was extradited. She was arrested in California. She did an interview, then she was extradited to Arizona, and she did another one. And there were a few other interviews, but that was it. That was the sum total of the media exposure at that point in time. So it had some media coverage, but it wasn't a big deal, all caps,
Yeah,
gonna
like
draw
this all
worldwide
out, yeah.
attention. Right, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, this is incredible.
Big headlines,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and this was a while ago, and I remember reading somewhere, and you can correct me if
Sure.
I'm wrong. At some point, she was wanting the death penalty over life in prison because they got different privileges or things that they got in jail, if that is any truth to it.
Well, I think she had made comments about preferring death to life in prison, but they were based on her belief that she would live a long time and that she'd rather just die than have to spend her life in prison.
That's, that's interesting.
So was she asking for it? Is that what I gather? Like, because there was one of her interviews, she just mentioned exactly what you said.
Yeah.
She said that I'd rather like die now than being, because I'm gonna live long. Her jeopardy of life, like she has a family, like she could live long. She don't want to be in one spot for a long time.
Well, her assertions on that varied. If you recall, in the
Right.
trial, she pled for her life. She
Right.
asked for her life. At other times, she asked for her life. But most infamously, on the day she was sentenced to found
Convicted,
guilty
right.
of first-degree murder, that very day, she went down to the basement of the courthouse, did a local interview,
And she said what she
and
said.
she said that, well, she blamed me for her defense and the choice to call her
Right.
her victim an abusive pedophile, which was certainly not true. But beyond that, she made the statement during that interview that she would rather get death than life.
Help me walk through one question.
Sure.
Why do we believe? Can I call a person allegedly a perp, like a thief or a killer or a homicidal maniac? What they say over lawyers. I always battled with this. Like when I watched the news, like now you just corrected me. I had the news in a different version because you get those bits, like
Yeah.
I told you. That's why I don't make up my mind until I found the whole story, right? Why, like what she says, it's relevant. Like a lot of people could come up with any accusation, throw it at you, and everybody will believe that person. Like
Right.
it could be a thug, a thief. Like they're aiming to hurt you.
Yeah.
But why do we always follow that? Like the news was going crazy when that happened. Like, oh, the lawyer did this, the attorney,
Yeah.
the defense attorney. The whole morning was, and I'm going, whoa, because I was a coach at the time too, and then I'm looking at it like, no, there's got to be two sides to the story here.
Well,
and that's what I want you to
yeah.
walk us through this.
Sure. I mean, it is amazing because that lie in particular was very damaging because it was threatening to my life
Yes,
and the
I remember
life
the
of my family and all the
words.
death threats and
Yeah.
things like that, right? But, I think sometimes in life people will believe what they want to believe, right? And so even though they know the source
Right.
is a liar, it is a
But they still
pathological
go with
liar
it.
and constant, they say, yeah, because, there's that great marketing book, Persuasion, by the ASU professor, talks about celebrity endorsements, right?
Right.
So you see a celebrity drink,
Yeah.
like Tom Cruise maybe,
Yeah.
drinking a Coke.
I did not want that. That was not me.
That was not me.
Yeah.
Tom, well, you get a restraining
Touche.
order.
Yeah. No, but
If Tom, if you're watching, a
and
restraining
that's a
order.
shout out to
But
We'll
and
post
they
her number
see,
after the show.
they see him drinking a Coke,
Yeah.
and they think he likes Coke,
Coke,
right?
right.
And so they saw me advocating for Miss Arias,
you. Right.
and they made that association. And they see the words, they see me on TV,
Right.
coming out of the words coming out of my mouth, and they believe that I believe these things, that I told these lies or what have you, right? And so they're so wanting to, and she didn't talk as much, right? I mean,
Right.
she testified for 18 days, which might be a world record, right?
Right.
But she said these things that people wanted to believe, because going back to what we were talking about earlier, is people want to believe defense attorneys are sleazy and everything else.
And that's
they're
what I mean.
inventing
Why
this
do
stuff.
we do that? Like, it's got to be, nobody speak. This is why I want this show to be defending the defenders. How's that? Defend the attorneys. Because if it wasn't for them, we will have like a chaos going on in our courtrooms.
And it is a guilt by association. They see that relationship. They see.
But that's the law.
me-
It's constitutional
I
rights.
understand
she
that,
has
but
all
not-
the rights to be represented.
And I'm not defending.
And I even
agree
today,
with
I
you.
still call it alleged. Because even though she's been prosecuted, she's already been sentenced, I would always say alleged because I wasn't there, I don't know anything. All I know as a regular citizen, I'm gravitating toward you to explain to us and to the audience, what do we need to do to protect ourselves for the future? That's really where this catch-22. What can we do so we don't have to sit and read all these people writing all this freedom that they have, attacking a defense lawyer while he's doing his job?
Well, look, I mean, empathy comes through understanding,
Right.
right? So it's not a matter of a deep understanding of law. It's like people like me coming out and talking about it
Right.
and saying, look, these are the rights, these are why we
Why
do
we-
the things
right.
we do. This is, why I like doing shows like this, because
Right.
it gives them a chance.
Yeah,
and
it gives us
and
all
I
of us,
write
even
those,
myself.
Yeah, and I write those things in my book, and I tell the stories, and this is what criminal defense attorneys do, and the role they play in the constitutional democracy. And you talk about those people behind the keyboard.
Yeah.
People get shocked when I use this word, but to me, they're terrorists because they threaten a government institution.
And they went after you after that
And
word.
they went after me. They're going after people.
Yeah, they did. I remember that.
When we have to have SWAT team walk us around the
Defend- yeah.
court, when we have to open our mail with white gloves, when we have to check our car for bombs, all that stuff, to me, that's terrorism. And we saw experts that were threatened during the case, everything else, and people just don't understand that it is the role we play. And look, it's understandable because we have so much to consume our lives, right? And we just look at headlines and we
Right.
read the headline and fake news and all these things, right? So we look at the headlines and we feel the way we feel, and we look for an outlet for our anger. So on one level, I get it, but on another level, we have to. The more people understand,
Right.
the more there is empathy and deeper understanding. And I think
We're going to have to take a short break, but we're going to come back with the same subject if you could
Okay.
continue, because I want to take a short break right now. This is Matt Real Talk Show. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.